We're calling this meeting to order.
Time is 4:30 p.m. Commissioners present are President Mary Wardell Giraducci, Commissioners Dunning, Lee, Wong, Mall, and Wolf, and Commissioner Ono is expected.
Thank you very much to Secretary Blackman, and thank you for all of you that are here for this meeting of the San Francisco Public Library Commission. It is Thursday, December 19th, and the materials and the agenda for tonight's meeting is on the back, so please make sure you pick that up as you are walking in. We are going to begin our commission meeting, as we always do, with general public comment. So at this time, we'd like to invite those of you that would like to make a general public comment.
Thank you very much, Commissioners. Stop the hate, stop the ignorance, don't give money to the Friends of the Library, don't accept money from the Friends of the Library. And I'm in the classical position of the boy who cried wolf. I said that about your predecessors, and now I have no rhetoric to extend to you people. As you've heard, I attended these meetings for 38 years. In that time, nobody ever declined an honorarium with respect to somebody who had recently passed away. I don't know that Ernest J Gaines was the first African American on this library commission. It would be a very hard thing to establish. I can tell you that nobody knows this commission better than I do, and I never found his predecessor. It's some considerable irony that although he may have been the first African-American commissioner, he is certainly the first commissioner who was not honored when he passed away. If you had told people when he served in 1974 and 75 that almost 45 years later, when he passed away at the age of 86, that you would not adjourn in his memory on your own initiative, but you would decline to do so when reminded of it, that would have been considered unthinkable. I should tell you that racism is just one category of ignorance. And of course, you can't separate out one category when the ignorance is as absolute as yours is. He may, in fact, have been the most distinguished library commissioner we ever had. Everybody refers to Nancy Pelosi, but of course Nancy Pelosi was merely the administrative aide of Philip Burton when she was appointed to this library commission. Mr. Gaines was already a nationally known author when he was appointed. And as I say, this level of ignorance would have been unthinkable for most of the time this commission has been in existence. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Further public comment?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. And I also had a comment about today's adjournment item, which is about an omission. There was no explanatory document explaining and being provided to the public as well as the commissioners apparently with respect to the person who you plan to adjourn in memory of today. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think it's very inappropriate not to include for the public and in advance with the agenda material that will explain in whose honor you're adjourning. I think it disrespects the public as well as the person in question. I can say that I appreciate that in the back of the room there is an obituary for that person, Mark Coates. The library, unfortunately, looks, as far as I can tell, my second point, it looks like a slum. It's crawling with lots and lots and lots of security people. One hardly can enter without seeing 4 or 5. They're on every floor. You had a suicide. You've got ugly black netting and yellow caution things all on every floor where the atrium is open or was open. There's no explanation here or discussion here as to what you're doing, why you're doing it, who's paying, what is the cost, what's going to be the impact on the library function and on the library's budget. Third, there are new computers. And where are the catalog computers? You go on several of the floors, and all of the tables right after the elevator are almost completely empty of catalog computers. Are you planning to get rid of the books and other materials as well? Do you not respect those so that people can find their way to them through the catalog and through catalog computers? What's going on? How about an explanation for the public and here? And there are a lot of dysfunctional and changed functions in the new computers, none of which are being explained by when there even is a note made public about some changes. How does it work? How do you get it to do the same things you used to do, only now you have to do it in a different way? Finally, there are no more printed notices for 19,000 people, according to information that I've gotten from the city librarian. Initially, when we asked how many people are affected, the answer was 181. These folks are probably the poorest and the least linguistically capable folks who will be hurt by that. You should reinstate those notices.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Art Persico, and I'm a taxpayer and resident of San Francisco. And I'm a member of the California Alliance for Retired Americans and the convener of the San Francisco Gray Panthers. I and my wife are fans of and frequent borrowers from the San Francisco Public Library. And we are also dedicated to equal access for all to the library and for all public services. So I'm here to join with others, San Francisco library users, to object to the elimination of mailed notices to San Franciscans who depend on it, on the written notices to access our city's public library. SF Public Library users who for any reason lack home internet access should be given the same information about their library materials as those who have computer access. Equality under the law is now a long-established principle of justice in our country, and a valued institution and service that is so basic to our democracy as the public library should not discriminate in providing equal access to anyone who wants to use it, especially in a city as progressive and humane as San Francisco claims to be and aspires to be. On the San Francisco Public Library's own website, the mission statement of the SF Public Library on the library administration page explicitly states, and I quote, "Mission statement, the San Francisco Public Library System is dedicated to the free and equal access to information, knowledge, independent learning, and the joys of reading for our diverse community. I urge you to honor and live by your own mission statement. Honor our country's commitment to equal protection under the law and strive to redeem our city's reputation as a humane one which values equality and diversity by reversing your decision to eliminate mailed notices so that once again, all San Franciscans may have the equal access they deserve to our SF Public Library." Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Nick Pasquali. I started a committee to restore the mailed notices to this library. The fact that you've eliminated them, or at least temporarily suspended them, is of grave concern to me. It's a form of elder abuse because it predominantly affects elders in San Francisco. There are grave equity issues involved. You're not honoring your obligation to provide access to everybody who has a library card, therefore every San Franciscan. My understanding is that you spend about $3 million a year on electronic databases and access, and this strikes me as grossly and I've been told by a senior member of your staff here that you can't afford to mail out these notices anymore, which I think on the surface is patently ridiculous. We have plenty of money. Reports are you are getting a surplus every year. You need to restore this critical service. I've used it for many, many years. There's no reason to be eliminating it. I'm going to read you a statement that we're presenting to the Democratic County Central Committee and in their January meeting. Whereas the San Francisco Public Library is severely penalizing thousands of library users who do not have access to the internet in their homes, and whereas the mid-September 2019 announcement without any prior public notice, the San Francisco Public Library eliminated mail notices limiting access to borrowing library materials. And whereas the San Francisco Public Library made major changes in its borrowing procedures that adversely affect the most vulnerable patron population, seniors, low-income, and disabled library users, therefore, be it resolved that the San Francisco County Democratic Central Committee urges the San Francisco Library Commission to immediately restore the option that all library patrons may choose to have library notices sent to them via the U.S. Postal Service or email, whichever the patron chooses, as has been the practice for many decades. My understanding is the total budget for this library is in the realm of about $170 million. Do you think you could find any part of that to serve the senior, low-income, and disabled population that you are disserving by eliminating these mailed services? You need to restore them immediately with no questions asked.
Thank you.
Hi, I guess I'm up next. I'm Suzanne Lee, senior resident of San Francisco, and I'm following these two gentlemen who are concerned about the fact that there are senior citizens who don't have internet, and they would love to receive their notices by mail. Is there any possible way that you can possibly, not just get rid of it, but have a little checkbox somewhere so that when they come in or whenever they check the books out, they still have to use their cards, there would be a question or a notice for them to go up to the front desk and check to see if they want mail notices. I can understand where you're trying to move into the future and some of them are just not ready. I can tell you that, we don't have TVs with antennas anymore. I'm sorry for the folks who don't have cell phones and they say, where are the payphones? We just don't have those anymore. So either have them check a little box or maybe find some way to get them into the 20th century. I myself check out a lot of books. I just returned 10 and they're way overdue. And if you didn't get rid of the fines, I would probably pay enough fines to at least take care of some of the emails. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Karen Fishkin. I don't think you guys need any more education. I think you understand the issue and the reason people are. I'm coming back. I've been here before to speak on this, so it's something that is seen as important. I'm on the board of Senior and Disability Action, and I'm also on the board of Gray Panthers. So, and I'm a senior myself, as if you couldn't guess. So I have a lot of exposure and experience with older and disability community. And I can tell you that those two communities are so often overlooked. It's really very sad. And I don't want to think that the library is not seeing these communities and their needs, but that they need a little push to understand the importance of receiving something in the mail as opposed to being asked to go to a computer that they may not have and use internet service that they may not be able to afford. I'm also on the board of the Haight-Ashbury Neighborhood Council, and that board unanimously passed this statement. Library card holders without computers and or internet access must be physically contacted with mailed notices. this is an issue that a broad swath of the community is concerned about. So that's all I want to say on that issue. I want to bring up another issue, and that is when I was here before, I came here, spoke my piece, and I went out and I went down the stairs and through the security gates. And when I came back out through the gates, I noticed nothing, no alarm went off. And I thought, that's odd. I've got keys in my pocket. How come that didn't go off? So I approached the two gentlemen who were your security people at the time, and I asked them that. I said, what's going on? The keys didn't set off the alarm. And they said, oh, that alarm is only to protect certain books that are going to exit the library. And I said, are you telling me that this security system protects books from going out, but does not protect the interior of the library from guns coming in? One of them laughed. The other one looked at me rather seriously and said, yes, that's the case. Really? Is that the way that the public is going to be protected at the library? That, boom, that just blows my mind.
Thank you. Further public comment? Seeing that there's none, we're going to move on our agenda to item number 2, which is a discussion about the Maya Angelou Statue Selection Committee. This is a discussion and possible action to approve the appointment of an individual who may be a member of the Library Commission to serve on the Arts Commission Selection Committee for the artist for the Maya Angelou statue at the main library as required by City Ordinance 243-18. At this time, we're going to have a presentation. I'll turn it over to our city librarian.
Thank you, President Wardell. Good evening, commissioners. Library staff appreciates this opportunity to update the commission about the status of the Board of Supervisors legislation to improve the depiction of women in the public realm, and more specifically, to create an artwork honoring Dr. Maya Angelou at the San Francisco Main Library. You have a copy of the specific ordinance in your packets. You may recall that we last discussed this agenda item back in May. Since that time, the Arts Commission has commenced planning efforts to post a revised request for qualifications in early 2020. As outlined in the memo in your packets, the description of the project has been revised so that the project goal more clearly aligns with the expectations of the legislative sponsors of the Board of Supervisors resolution that created the project. The RFQ will state that the goal of the project is to honor Dr. Maya Angelou with the creation of a three-dimensional statue depicting Dr. Angelou. We're fortunate to have the Arts Commission's Director of Public Art, Susan Pontius, and the project manager who will be overseeing the Maya Angelou RFQ, Alita Lee, present this evening. Tom Fortin, our chief of the main library, has been taking the lead in working with the Arts Commission. This update will inform your discussion and deliberation about who the Library Commission will appoint to the next Dr. Maya Angelou project review panel. I'll turn it over to Tom at this time.
Thank you, Michael. Again, I'm Tom Fortin, Chief of the Main Library, and I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to introduce the next agenda item about a unique opportunity coming to the main library to celebrate one of our favorite artists and authors, Dr. Maya Angelou. Staff and patrons at the Main are particularly excited about this San Francisco Arts Commission project because, as we've seen over the past few months with the Exploratorium's Middle Ground exhibit, our community is especially responsive to positive engagement on the Larkin Plaza. And with Middle Ground scheduled to be removed next summer, we can now look forward to the next installation on the Larkin Plaza, and we will welcome this new art piece for all San Franciscans at the main library. And now to share details on the process, it's my pleasure to introduce Susan Pontius.
Thank you, commissioners. City Librarian Michael Lambert gave you a very good overview of the project. And we are, I just turned it off.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, forward. Oh, here we go. Again, this is mandated by city ordinance, and we will we are reissuing this RFQ so that the description of what the goals are more closely aligns with the expectations of the project sponsors. We will, one of the goals of this particular sculpture, as stated in the ordinance, is to not only honor Dr. Angelou, but to provide a positive role model for girls and women in the city. And while most of our sculptures, figurative sculptures, honorific sculptures in the city, which were commissioned in the last century, in the 19th century, are depict men, this will be one of three that will honor a woman. So it's very important in that way. And why can't I do this? Oh. I give up. Technology baffles me. Okay. It's that one. Okay. This is an estimated timeline you have before you, which is that we will be issuing this RFQ in January. We would hope to have our pre-qualification panel in February or March, with the first panel to review the qualified list in March, and then the artists would be given funding to do a specific proposal, which would be on public display here at the main library for public comment, and followed by the then second panel meeting, which would probably be in June, which would then make a recommendation to first the Visual Arts Committee and then the full commission for approval. The panel's role is recommendation only by city charter. All recommendations must be finally approved by the Arts Commission before the contract and the commission can actually be awarded. So we are asking for a commissioner from this body to serve on this panel, and so that's why I'm here this evening and can answer any questions. Yes.
I'm a sorry. After you finish your presentation, we'll go to public comment,
okay.
and then we'll have you come back. So I'll turn to City Librarian. Is there anything else?
No, thank you, President Wardell. That concludes the presentation.
Okay. So at this particular time, I'd like to call public comment on this particular agenda item.
Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. Yesterday, the House of Representatives impeached our president. I'm remembering another time, close to this time of year, when my Angelou was reading her wonderful and inspiring poem at the inauguration of another president, President Obama. And that gives me chills to mention that. That was a very inspiring time and moment, and certainly a contrast to these days. We've certainly endorsed going forward with this. I wish that we were a little more specific with respect to the flop that happened with regard to all the effort that our library commissioner, who was the last one working on this project, basically the Visual Arts Committee, I believe it's a subcommittee of the Arts Commission, approved one of the contestants, if you like, and then when it went to the full Arts Commission, it turned out that the project sponsor wanted something that was a statue and not an artwork. And I recall questioning what the changed wording of the legislation and so on was back earlier this year when statue had been replaced by artwork, quote unquote. A little more detail about what happened would be helpful, particularly so that the same problem or a similar problem would not happen again. And thank you, Commissioner Mall, for nodding and for your efforts so far. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment? Seeing that there's none, we're going to move into our commission discussion as well as possible action. And so at this time, I will ask the presenter, and Tom, and you also can be available as well, to make yourself available to commissioners who may have questions and or comments, and ask you to be able to respond to them to the best of your ability. Commissioners? Commissioner Susan Small.
I was just confused.
Speak into the microphone.
I was just confused with the document, the amended document that we received that had, sorry. Okay. That had artwork, wait, where is it? Artwork crossed off and statue crossed off and artwork put in. Yeah, statue crossed off and then artwork put in.
Are you looking at the ordinance? The Board of, I didn't send you this, so I don't know. The Board of Supervisors ordinance.
The ordinance.
Originally did state statue. It was changed, and the actual ordinance that was approved was changed to artwork with a significant figurative representation of Dr. Angelou. That's how it was modified. And that was the directive the Arts Commission originally followed, only to learn later that what they really wanted was a statue.
Okay, so this document isn't right then, right?
No, that document looks like the edited version. It is not the version. The version that was actually passed stated artwork with a significant figurative representation of Dr. Angelou.
Okay.
Further commissioner discussion? Commissioner Dunning?
Yeah, just it may be in regards
You may
to.
want to stay at the podium because I think these are directed at you, please.
It may be in regards to what you just mentioned, but in your original presentation, you said that we're going at it again so that we come up with something that more closely aligns with the goals of the project sponsor. So is that specifically the goal of the project sponsor? Is that what's different this time around?
Yes,
is that
there was
saying it's a figure
yes, so
that-
we have specifically stated in the RFQ that it is a three-dimensional statue, so that we're very specific about what is desired, and then that will be the directive to the panel too, that is.
That's the main difference between.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
I think there is a disconnect between, for those of us in the art world, when we say figurative, it covers a broad range of representation, whereas with the project sponsors, when they said figurative, they thought we were talking about still a statue.
Okay.
So I think that was where the disconnect happened. That's my theory.
Thank you.
Further commission commentary and or questions? Commissioner Mall?
Is it appropriate to suggest someone to be on the commission now?
We
or-
have a requested
Oh,
action.
you have, okay, sorry.
That's okay. Is there any other commission questions? So to get to where Commissioner Mall was headed, that we do have a requested action commission. The Library Commission should appoint an individual who may be a member of the Library Commission to serve on the Arts Commission Review Committee for the artists who will create the sculpture honoring Dr. Maya Angelou at the San Francisco Main Library. So that is a requested action that is before this commission at this time.
So I move to recommend Commissioner Wardell.
I second that.
So at this time, we have a motion to, from Commissioner Wardell, which is myself, the president of the Library Commission, to serve, and we have a second. Is there any other commission discussion?
I just want to confirm, are you willing to serve? Like, you've been nominated, but.
At this point, I just want to see, is there any other commission discussion at this point? Any other nominations? So yes, I'd be willing to serve, but I wanted to ensure that there were no other nominations. Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and at this time, I'd like to call the vote. All those commissioners in favor of having myself serve as the commissioner on the to serve on the Arts Commission Review Committee for the artists who will create the sculpture honoring Dr. Maya Angelou at the San Francisco Main Library, say aye.
Aye.
All those individuals who are opposed? Okay, we have a approval, so thank you very much for your presentation.
And thank you for agreeing to serve.
Okay, we are moving on to agenda number 3, which is our fiscal year 2021 and 2022 budget priorities. This discussion will help us look at our 2-year budget cycle, and we're going to invite Maureen Singleton, who's the Chief Operating Officer, to walk us through this.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner and President, and I'm grateful to have this opportunity to walk through with the Commission the initial discussion of the proposed investments for the upcoming budget cycle, which covers fiscal 21 and 22. This is the standard budget calendar that we present to you each budget cycle that breaks out the activities by development, negotiation, and finalization. Right now, we are starting our discussions with the Commission about the proposals that we would like to include with our submission to the Controller and the Mayor's Office this February. On a high level, we do what's called a 2-year rolling budget. And what that means is that each year we develop a budget with 2 fiscal years, and in a subsequent year, we're allowed to revisit what was the second year in a prior cycle. So last year, we approved fiscal year 20 and 21, and with this cycle, we'll be revisiting fiscal 21 for any changes, and then developing fiscal 22. I had hoped by this juncture to have the revenue estimates from the Controller's Office for both our annual Library Preservation Fund, or LPF, as well as our fund balance. However, those figures were not available in time for today's discussion. At the time that this document was issued, for explanatory reasons, to meet the deadline, the city's budget shortfall was also not known. That was revealed to us earlier this week, and when we come back in January, I'll provide this all in written format for you. But right now, what I do know from the city is that the projected shortfall for the whole city for the next 2 years totals $419.5 million. And for the first year, which is fiscal 21, that's 195.4, and then in fiscal 22, it's 224.1. The direction that the mayor's office gave the general fund departments over the next 2 fiscal years is to reduce their general fund support by 3.5% each fiscal year. And then, as typical, as I've noted here as well, the self-supporting departments, of which the library is one, we are asked to absorb all cost increases. Also typical at this time of year, we have some standard unknowns, and that includes what's happening at the state level and what would be the impact on our work order agreements with other departments. So when other departments provide work for the library, we do have to pay them for their time. They are also currently developing their budget, so we will be working with them over the next month or so to finalize those figures. Though I will note that some of those figures really aren't finalized until the mayor's phase, so we'll update you along the way as those figures change. The library's budget is always built based on strategic and budget priorities. These serve as our guideposts. It helps us build on our foundation from prior budget cycles, as well as determine where we're going to evolve to meet changing community needs. As I walk through with you all of the investment proposals, they're going to be broken out by those strategic priorities. As a point of reference, Everything that's in this PowerPoint is also available in attachment 1, which is in a larger print format, which should make it easier to read than the 8.5 by 11 PowerPoint presentation. As a point of orientation, the way that we typically present our proposals is by each fiscal year and indicate whether a proposal is one-time or ongoing. If it is ongoing, it's mentioned just in the year that it's proposed. So for example, in fiscal 21, if it's ongoing, it would just be assumed in the fiscal 22 budget. I'm not repeating that investment amount for fiscal 22. And so with that, I'm going to roll right into a high-level discussion of each of the proposals for this cycle. And then after public comment, we'll be available to answer any questions. And the chiefs are also here if there are more specific questions that you have that I don't have the response to. For fiscal 21, you'll see for the category of Premier Urban Library, we're looking at a total investment of around $50,000. And then for fiscal 22, we're looking at $465,000. One of the key investments in fiscal 21 is an effort to affirm the main library as the Tenderloin branch library. So it's the main library is known as a citywide resource for our deep collections and our services, but we're also really the Tenderloin branch library. So we want to make sure that we're doing all that we can to meet the needs of the Tenderloin community. And one of the ways in which we're hoping to do that is to employ the Harvard method, where we're going to work with participants from the Tenderloin to help understand their aspirations for the community, discuss their solutions and their challenges and solutions, and then evolve our services to best meet those needs. So we would be conducting with this $25,000 some outreach events to the members of the community, particularly targeting new Americans in the neighborhood, as well as our Arabic community, Arabic-speaking community in the Tenderloin. We'd also want to make sure that we're marketing to them to let them know about the services and resources available here at the main library. The other main investment here is $460,000 for a library hub. And the idea here is to create an outdoor unit that would serve as a hold unit as well as collection opportunity, with the hope to focus first on the Dogpatch community, which is going through development, and the anticipation is that we would want to make that investment in fiscal 22 so that it's ready to meet any development needs over time. For literacy and learning, some of the key investments that we're going to be focusing on would be the creation of what's called an honor-bound collections program. This is a giveaway program where we would be working with nonprofits and government agencies that specifically support communities with low literacy rates and low income to encourage those families to use the library resources. Some of the possible locations would be working with First 5 Family Resource Centers, as well as jail waiting rooms. We'd use this $100,000 to purchase materials. That is around $70,000 for books, for collections, around $18,000 for shelving, and then $12,000 for branding. And then this would be an ongoing investment, so we would continue to invest in collections over time to reach out to those communities. Another investment in this category is actually shifting the opening day collection for the Mission Branch for youth and adults from fiscal 21 to fiscal 22. So that would align better with what we expect the renovation program timeline would be. So we wouldn't need to be buying the books next year, but the subsequent year. So that's really, it's not a cut, it's simply shifting those costs from one year to the next. Another thing that we're doing in 21 is taking a look at and addressing the tariffs that we're seeing on our print collections for both the adult and youth collections. So we've built in approximately a 2% tariff allocation for those collections. For adult, that's about 133.5, and for youth, it's 56.5. Other literacy and learning investments include expanding the e-collections by around 10% in fiscal '22. In the last budget cycle, we had increased the e-collections for fiscal '21 by around $2 million. So we're not repeating that here because it's already part of the adopted budget. And then the last investment in literacy and learning is about having a software for our literacy program. So for Project Read, Frog Readers, and English as a second language. So having a consolidated software program that would help enhance their communication between the tutors and the learners, better track their progress, and then plan for the future. For youth engagement, the key investment here is truing up what our budget needs are for our Play to Learn structures. Our Play to Learn structures are really tied to our Every Child Ready to Read initiative. It's engaging the children through play and helping them begin to learn to read. So this true up would allow us in the upcoming 21 cycle to make sure that we are refreshing at least 5 branches a year, and then upping an allocation for ongoing maintenance for parts and materials that are needed to be refreshed as we go along, and not necessarily wait for a full refreshment of a particular location. So that would result in a total budget on an ongoing basis of approximately $80,000. For digital strategies, our key investments here are one-time in nature, with the largest one in fiscal '21 being for our phone system. The city as a whole is transitioning to voice over internet protocol phone systems, or VoIP, and now is the time that the library would be getting into the queue for that transition. So this would cover approximately 840 phone units, 220 accessory units, as well as software. With the transition to VoIP, we don't expect our ongoing operating costs to change. Another key investment in this category is for IT backup. It's designed to help us be resilient and redundant and have redundancy in the face of cybersecurity concerns and ransomware. That's a $300,000 investment. Another investment in this category is refreshing the laptops in our laptop lending kiosk programs. You may recall over the last several fiscal years and budget cycles, we've been expanding our kiosk programs throughout the branch system, and this will jumpstart refreshing some of the laptops that are in those units to make sure that we have something that's new based on life cycle. And the $2,000 includes both the unit as well as all the accompanying software. For our Partnerships for Excellence, what we'd like to do is expand our financial coaching program from 1 day a week to 3 days a week. In these coaching sessions, individuals are able to work one-on-one with a coach that can do things like help the individual open a bank account, establish or improve credit scores. So we'd really like to up the frequency with which people can be available and have those appointments with the coach. There's a high demand for that, and 1 day a week is definitely proving to be insufficient. For organizational excellence over the next year, we would like to invest approximately $57,000, and $7,000 of that will be for a content marketing platform, and that's really to help manage our marketing and public relations campaign and our calendar system. And then the $50,000 investment is to engage with an expert survey consultant who would conduct, analyze, and report on the annual patron satisfaction, which reaches out to users, library users, and non-users. And this would ultimately free up some staff time, particularly for those folks who help administer the survey, for more direct public service. With respect to facilities and maintenance infrastructure, you may recall over the last couple years, we have layered on some additional classifications into these proposals, and it aligns with the city's capital planning program's 5 funding principles. And what that really condenses down to is the investment related to a mandate, to safety, preservation, programmatic, or economic development. And then also we try to take a look at the urgency and importance of the proposal. To keep things simple, even though this is really applicable to capital investments, what we did is we apply this outlook to all of the facility division investments. The key investments to call your attention to under facilities and maintenance for the upcoming cycle really have to do with the branch program, and that's a renovation and building a new library in the Ocean View. A key investment there is allocating $10 million in fiscal year 21 to the Ocean View project. As you know, we're still in the development phases, but we do know that this has transitioned from a renovation to a new site. And what we'd like to do is continue to build a budget as we figure out what is the right solution for the community. So if we allocate $10 million and we couple that with the prior allocation of $10.5 million, we'd be sitting at $20.5 million. For Chinatown, in the last budget cycle, we had allocated $20 million for that in fiscal 21 for that project. What we'd like to do with this proposal is allocate the remaining 2.4 needed to fully fund that program by fiscal 2021. And that's a total budget program of $29.4 million. We'd also like to continue to build our roofing program budget at about $1 million per year. So this allows us to have the cash flow necessary to renovate or replace our roofs as they are necessary. So our facilities division works hard to determine what needs to be replaced when, based on their observations as well as some predictive modeling. We also want to make sure, as some of our facilities age, that we have sufficient funding for flooring to replace them over time, and then refreshing our restroom accessories and faucets. So with those, moving towards automated service categories so that we are reducing our waste with respect to towels and soap dispensers. And then another highlight for the facilities and maintenance infrastructure investments would be creating a senior playground at our Richmond branch library. So this would be co-located with the youth playground that's already there, and allow an opportunity for us to engage with the senior population in health and wellness, but also bring them into the library. So we're excited about that opportunity. So how does this sum out for us? On a high level, it totals to approximately $14.4 million of investment proposals for fiscal year 21 and $3.3 million for fiscal year 22. The majority of those investments are one-time in nature. And when we come back in January, we'll be able to show you exactly what that would result in for the entire proposed budget and how much fund balance use that we would need to utilize to fully fund these proposals. And again, I just want to remind you that the literacy and learning, although it's showing a negative number, this is simply because we're shifting a cost from one fiscal year to the next. We are not cutting the collections budget. So what are some next steps? We're going to come back to the committee, or the commission, sorry, in January with more detailed information of what the resulting budget would be if we were to approve the proposals presented to you tonight. We'll come back in February as well to present a final budget to you, along with some options to get the commission's approval before we submit to the mayor and the controller's office at the end of February. So with that, that concludes my presentation of the budget, and I'm available for questions after public comment.
Thank you so much, Ms. Singleton. At this time, we'd like to call public comment on agenda item number 3.
Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. I'm really not happy with the lack of real clarity with respect to what's going on concerning books and materials being provided to the public And this has happened over and over again. And it starts with your so-called strategic priorities, where there's nothing at all explicitly mentioning books, periodicals, materials, whether you provide them on stone tablets or on Kindles or anything else. There isn't one word here about what you are providing to the public with respect to the general materials category. The closest thing is literacy and learning, whatever that means. Classes, the fifth floor where you destroyed the half of the magazine collection shelving to put in something for a couple hundred people a year to use for classes and so on and so forth. It's completely concealed and hidden. We used to get a pie chart showing what the major breakdowns are for the budget. There is no pie chart this time. We're hearing about an $882,000 or so shift. What does that mean? We're going to put that into next year and maybe next year and next year and next year. When I come out of the elevators on the third and fourth floor, where there used to be catalogs galore, 8 or more, there are now maybe 2, and the place looks forlorn. That, as far as I'm concerned, is de-emphasizing, one might say, trashing the concept of the library as a place that values what it has for the public and the means for the public to find it. In the back, and as part of your agenda packet, you have this unlabeled attachment 1 with multiple pages, but no headings. And I started out trying to follow in vain the details that you provided in the one handout. There has been apparently no mention of this other handout, which is in the back of the room and part of our agenda packet. I'd like to see exactly what's happening to collections. I also don't understand why the library has to use some third-party Harwood method to figure out what its patrons want. That seems to me part of what professional librarians can do by themselves. It looks like another behind closed doors trickery to who knows what, come up with a foregone conclusion without a public process. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment? Seeing that there's none, we're going to move into our library discussion and commission. This is only for discussion. We're not at the point of taking action, so I'll leave it open for Commissioner Wolf.
Thank you, Maureen, for a great presentation. I really appreciate the information you provided and look forward to hearing how this will all impact the larger budget. There were 2 programs that stood out to me that I wanted to understand further. I think one of the things I like about this part of the discussion is it focuses on some new staff initiatives and some sort of bold experimentation, and so that excites me. And there were 2 that stood out that really are addressing equity issues and access, and one was the book vending machine, and the second is the honor-bound collections. And I wanted to get a better sense of the book vending machine program. That's a lot of dollars attributed to that, $460,000. Is this a new concept? Have other districts around the country used this before? What is this? It has great potential and about reaching these different communities. I love that idea, but it seems like a big number. And so I wanted to know how this is going to be managed. And the second one was the honor-bound collections, which is at a lower level, which is $100,000. I once again find this really exciting and intriguing, but it seems like a new program. Where is this coming from? How will it be, determined if this is successful? And just wanted to better understand these 2-pronged approach to reaching communities in need.
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Wolf. I'll start with the automated kiosk investment. This is an opportunity for San Francisco Public Library to pilot a new service model. As a library system, we currently have the second most library outlets per square mile the most of any municipality, or the second most of any municipality in the country. So we are well branched in San Francisco. That being said, we do recognize that there is new development and many neighborhoods that are not currently served by a physical branch library in close proximity. So the automated kiosk, this technology is becoming more popular in the industry. And this is a way for us to extend our reach into communities and deliver service. We can have popular materials and collections available for checkout in essentially a vending machine. Mm-hmm. But with the proliferation of Amazon lockers in the private sector, this is the public sector, public library version of that model. And so patrons in a given community could place reserves from collections in any of our 28 libraries and have those materials delivered locally to this machine and deposited there for pickup. And they would be emailed when the items are available for pickup. These systems also allow for return of materials and immediate check-in. So our library staff would be able to maintain this equipment and go out on a regular basis, refresh the collections available on site, bring requested materials, and then take away materials that have been returned and return them to other library locations. So in the prior budget cycle, we did have an investment for similar technology for the Hunters View neighborhood, and that is a Hope SF site. So we are still working with Hope SF and that building management company on the timeline for installing that equipment. So this is just another investment along the same lines, but in our survey of the marketplace, we have found more robust technology. So that is one investment. The other investment is the honor-bound collections. This is an opportunity for us to give back to the community, to outreach in the community. We just had the mayor's very successful book and toy giveaway at City Hall. So this honor-bound collection would give us the resources to do more of that type of activity, to help families in underserved communities build their own libraries at home and take away collections that they can keep and really start literacy and learning in the home with a fixed collection that can stay in the home. And we also have our Chief of Collections and Technical Services, Shelley Cocking, here if you have any additional questions on that.
Can I do a follow-up question? Mm-hmm. When with the book vending machine idea, the concept, thank you for that explanation. It's very helpful. For the $460,000, is that one location or is that multiple locations? What does that enable?
That is for one location, wow. But it's essentially the Cadillac model. It's, we're budgeting for the most robust version. It remains to be seen the physical location where this will go and, exactly how many modules we need or how many holds lockers will be required for the site. So we are budgeting for the most robust technology available.
Commissioner Mull?
I have a few questions. Specifically, what is an opening day refer to?
So basically, when we close a branch for renovation, we take all the more worn copies of books out of the collection.
When you close?
So we're going to close Mission Branch at some point to rebuild it. And when we do that, we go through the collection really closely and throw out all the really, or even slightly worn books. And then we buy shiny new ones for opening day so that when it opens, it's a beautiful, pristine collection for the location. So that's what, in the industry, we call that an opening day collection.
Is that sort of standard?
Yeah, it's standard, but it's also, if you think about it, like paperbacks, they don't last a long time. They start to yellow and fall apart. So if you put those in boxes for 2 years, by the time you take them out, they're going to be in pretty bad shape. Or travel books, you don't want 3-year-old travel books when you reopen a branch. So we have to refresh to make sure it's the most up to date. and looks good, and lots of extra copies, because every time we opened one of our branches during the blip process, the circulation went up significantly. So we'd make sure, popular books, you get 4 or 5 copies so that the shelves won't look bare by the time you are done the first week.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Maureen, I have a question. Going back to your high level, as
Yeah.
you say. Now, I must be missing something here. Because on the one hand, we're talking about the mayor's requirements that all agencies cut back 3.5%.
So that's applicable to the general fund departments, and we are considered a self-supporting department. So because of our library preservation fund, so we have essentially guaranteed funding, and we then are not subject to the requirements from the mayor's office to reduce our budget.
At all?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, but they will, and like I said, if there are cost increases elsewhere in our budget, we're expected to fund those. But that's standard. We do that no matter what the condition of the economy is, good or bad. If those costs go up, then we cover those costs.
Okay, so these new exciting programs are not counterproductive to the city's goals right now.
Right. So we're not going against the mayor's direction by providing enhancements to our budgets, because we are not subject to the general fund reduction requests. And I like to provide that information just as context for us to understand the fortunate position that we are in with our library preservation fund as compared to the general fund departments.
I understand that. As just a question, was this a surprise to the Board of Supervisors and the mayor that they were so deep in debt, so to speak?
I can't say for sure if it were a surprise for them or not, but I do think that there's been general talk of assuming that there will be an eventual shift in the economy. So we're in one of the longest expansions in history, and I think that they're trying to be conservative and careful about how we invest and what our costs are as a city, so that we are not in a scenario where we have to make big drastic cuts. So they're asking folks to find ways to reduce their reliance on the general fund. And for some departments, it means that they might be able to find other ways to generate revenue. And it isn't necessarily a cut. And the goal always is with the mayor's office, they want you to avoid layoffs if you're making a reduction, and that you're finding efficiencies in what you're doing, that the dollar is being used in its best way.
Okay, my last question, and thank you, is the vending machine. How is that really different than a bookmobile?
It has one very big difference. It is non-staffed. This is like a library outlet that requires no staff on site. So it's a physical piece of equipment that is available up to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the library staff are not there on site to engage with patrons. However, in this instance, it is a way for us to extend our reach, provide access to collections, and still serve a community without adding significant ongoing costs to our budget.
And this is being done in other communities?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Wong?
Thank you, as always, Maureen, for the incredibly detailed report. I do want to extend that discussion a little bit, if it's okay, because I think the comparison between a bookmobile and the vending machine is a really good one. On average, like, how much time does it take, if you're staffing a bookmobile, how much time does it take for one person to be there? Is it like one FTE for the bookmobile? What does that staffing process look like?
That's an excellent question. Thank you, Commissioner Wong. We have 4 bookmobiles in the San Francisco Public Library system, and we have regular stops for some communities, like Treasure Island. That is a community that does not have physical access to a branch library. Our bookmobiles also visit daycare centers. They visit senior centers. So this is a way for us to reach communities that may not have easy access visiting a physical library location. Our bookmobiles are also a way for us to raise awareness of the library. You'll see our bookmobiles prominently at different festivals, community events, Sunday streets, the annual Pride Parade. So it serves a dual purpose, but I would say the original mission of the bookmobile is to provide access to library services to neighborhoods without physical access to a branch. And now with this emerging technology, there's innovative new service models to replicate some of that service model.
Sure. Yeah. I guess for what it's worth, just I think exploring the vending machine idea is a great thing, and I think we can, if we can prove out that the level of service is quite high with this, then it becomes this new sort of a category we can explore, right? I think to get there, a useful comparison to see is, if we have the equivalent, let's say like 1 FTE actually staffing a bookmobile, and we can provide, a few hours of service a day, let's say, to an area like the dog patch via the bookmobile model, then the comparison becomes, Commissioner Mulder, your point, like, are we spending, is it that we're spending $450,000 for potentially up to like 10 times the number of hours of service because it's available up to 24 hours versus like 2 on a given day, plus the fact that we don't have to potentially hire a new FTE, which is, especially in San Francisco, like, 150 plus automatically of fully loaded cost. That just on the basis of that, the hire alone, like this automatically pays itself off in a matter of like 1 or 2 years, which is quite tremendous given that we can 10x the service and likely increase capacity and all these different things that are really useful. So I do think like the number is big, like it's a lot of money, but I do think that this gives us leeway to explore it. And I think the major thing to focus on is it's a one-time thing for huge savings year over year. I'm expecting the lifetime of this to be quite long, beyond like the payback period that I'm like sort of sketching out here. But that's sort of my perspective on how to think about this. And again, like I know the number may seem big, but I think what potentially could be useful then is then for numbers to come back and say like, look, this is going to be an easy justification if you zoom out to 10 years and all of a sudden we've netted out like way positive in the taxpayers' favor because we went with this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further commissioner questions or discussion? Commissioner Dunning?
The 90 laptop loaning line item. It says that refresh 90 laptops that are end of life, and 6 kiosks at $2K each, including all software. How do we what's end of life? What do we deem as the?
Our CIO, Michael Lang's here, and while he's approaching, our general equipment lifespan is 5 years. Okay, so he can speak to that.
Good evening, Michael Lang, Chief of IT. To answer your question, these laptops are Windows 7, old generation. Actually, Windows 7 is become obsolete now. I think the first kiosk we did was about 4 or 5 years ago. So the timing is about right. So the first kiosk we deployed requires change. And also the support from HP of those laptops are also discontinued.
Yeah, Windows 7 is going away. Yeah.
So moving forward, as we move forward, every kiosk that we have been deployed Every 5 years, those laptops will need to be replaced. The kiosk itself is actually part of the maintenance and support agreement, so there is no cost of upgrading the kiosk itself. But the laptops is on us.
What happens to those 90 laptops?
They get refurbished
Okay.
Through a virtual warehouse. In other words, other departments in the city can vie for them. Otherwise, they get e-wasted or disposed of.
So we don't get like credit for them. They just sort of go into the citywide
They're-
laptop
Yes.
queue.
There's no value to it. It's
For adoption and love from other departments.
Yeah.
Actually, a lot of them are actually breaking, and that's why we're doing this proposal, is because we're getting feedback from the librarians that they're breaking. The level of service, they're much slower, they're clunkier, and the user experience is kind of negative right now.
And the 90, is that just, like, how many are there total? Like, what, is this all of them, or is this, what's 90 out of how many are we?
Most kiosks have about 12 laptops.
Okay.
So we're talking about probably 6 or 7. I mean, we'll maximize as much as possible with the budget given, but the subsequent years will also have refreshes. However, we're hoping that this is a very big cleanup, but every year we're expecting to do 1 or 2 kiosks as a part of our normal routine. If you notice that we are asking one time, again, we want to do ongoing, but I think we can be able to absorb that.
Yeah, because I would have imagined that we would have planned for this if we had known that, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the last question is, what was it? What is our, in terms of loss prevention, how is it going? Like, I know the Chromebook thing with the Wi-Fi was not great.
Right. We've sunset
Disappeared on us,
Right.
and so I'm wondering how the laptop program is. Do those disappear as well, or are we pretty
That's
good
a
at
great
maintaining them?
question. Thank you for that. We did completely sunset the teched out program where individuals could take hardware home. However, with the laptop lending program, we have much greater success of hanging on to that equipment because it does have security tags. If they are not removed, I think they will beep when they go through the gates if they're not returned. But we do not have a high loss rate with that equipment. I do
What's the
not have
loss
the numbers off the top of my head.
The laptops, first of all, are identified. It will not be functional outside the library building. It's because we lock the connectivity only to the branch or main library Wi-Fi.
They're bricks, essentially, once they leave.
Yeah, once they leave, it doesn't work.
Okay.
And the communication to the public is they know this and they're not going to take it.
So what is the loss rate?
I don't think there's really a loss rate. I think it's mostly damage.
Okay, thank you.
Any further commission comments on this item? Commissioner Lee?
No question, but I appreciate being alerted about the uncertainties that Maureen you mentioned earlier on. So we'll have to wait until January to find out the uncertainty and the impacts to where it is that may need to make some hard choices.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Ono, thank you. See you join us.
Thank you. I apologize for being late and for missing your presentation, but I'm sure it was very good. I did review the material and my fellow commissioners asked the questions I wanted, and I look forward to more information in January. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other further commission discussion or questions on this item? Okay, so thank you so much for presenting us this budget presentation and the clarity. And we look forward to the next presentation, and we'll be moving into action in January, and then actually
In February.
February.
Yep.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to agenda item number 4, which is a discussion. Let me get this here on surveillance technology policy. And so we're going to have a presentation. We'll go to our public comment, and then we'll have commission discussion on the item. Thank you.
Thank you, President Wardell. Library staff has prepared a presentation regarding the development of a new surveillance technology policy. The The genesis of this prospective policy is tied to a new ordinance passed by the Board of Supervisors, which requires city departments that use surveillance technology to submit a surveillance technology policy to the Board of Supervisors to cover each form of technology used by the department. This ordinance went into effect June 14th. In compliance with the ordinance, the library is seeking your input and policy guidance regarding the technology applications used by our department that fall under the definition of surveillance technology. The purpose of this policy work is to promote transparency and protect the privacy rights of residents and businesses. Our Chief Analytics Officer, Randy McClure, has been working closely with our CIO, Michael Lang, and other staff to inventory the library's use of surveillance technology. He'll be presenting this evening.
Thank you, Michael, and good evening, everyone. Happy holidays. So as mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit tonight about the city's new ordinance relating to surveillance technology. This is Chapter 19B in the Administrative Code of the city. It's a new ordinance that requires city departments that use or acquire surveillance technology to submit a policy to the Board of Supervisors for each form of that technology. So all 53 city departments are subject to this ordinance, which Mr. Lambert mentioned went into effect in June of this year. It was drafted by Supervisor Peskin. It was also passed into law, as I said, last summer, and there was wide-ranging support on the board for this ordinance. The purpose of the ordinance, as promoted and defined by the Committee on Information Technology here in the city, is to promote transparency of government, to protect privacy rights of residents and businesses, and to initiate a public discussion on government surveillance. Oops. So here's the text of the ordinance, and I won't read all of it to you, but basically the first line of the text says, quite clearly defining a surveillance technology is any technology used to collect information on any individual or group. It lists a number of things that might fall under that definition, and then it lists below there several examples of what might be included. And we highlighted here in blue 2 of the areas of this ordinance and the definition that fall under the auspices of the library, which are video and audio monitoring and or recording technology, such as surveillance cameras. Many departments have something like that. And then, as you see at the very bottom, radio frequency ID scanners. So we have something like that as well that's being implemented. There are a number of notable exemptions in the ordinance. There were 15 that were called out specifically. Again, I didn't list them all here. They're in the packet where you have the language from the ordinance. But a number of those would include things like office hardware, computers, HR and database systems like payroll, IT security, physical access control systems, key cards essentially, communication devices, which would be something like staff phones, pagers, et cetera, devices intended to monitor safety and security of facilities, and GPS devices on city vehicles. All of those are exempted, among other things, from this ordinance. So we've been working on this, our response to this ordinance, and in terms of thinking about what would fall into our inventory of surveillance technologies that we would report on, and ultimately driving toward a set of policies for each of those technologies. And our partners in that process are very important because the Committee on Information Technology has been instrumental in leading that for all of the city departments. You can read in the language, it's a very expansive ordinance. There's a lot of things that could potentially fall under that. So they've been sort of guiding that process for us. They've managed the timeline. They've steered development of policy toolkits and templates for us. They've also impaneled a privacy and surveillance advisory board, which includes a number of city officials from various departments who have expertise in this area, and acting as a liaison for the city departments with the Board of Supervisors. Then we've also received great counsel from our Office of the City Attorney, sitting on stage with you as well, providing counsel on interpretation of the ordinance and applicability to existing technologies. So the citywide inventory, was reported by Coit, I believe it was last month, is that 33 city departments are currently reporting 186 surveillance technologies. Of that group, 60% of those fall into one of the 10 categories listed there in the bullets. I've noted again that 2 of the bullets are in blue because those are specifically relevant to us here at San Francisco Public Library. The remaining technologies, which results in about a 74, I believe, will be evaluated individually by the Court Privacy and Surveillance Committee in January and potentially February. So let's talk about the 3 technologies that we currently have on our inventory and have been approved through COIT. Those 3 technologies, as you can see here, are passive RFID tags and scanners, our EnvisionWare computer management software, and our security cameras. We'll go through each one. So RFID obviously is a technology that this commission is very familiar with. It's been brought in front of them many times. It's specifically cited in the ordinance, as I noted earlier. So we felt, with discussion with both COIT and the city attorney, to be fully transparent and open about our use of RFID technology in the passive sense. We wanted to make sure that we presented it to the commission and develop a policy as appropriate. So RFID scanners, as you remember, and tags will be used throughout the library system to check in and out library materials. We want to be fully transparent about it. We're only using them for inventory control of materials. That's it. And as it says there at the bottom, SFPL remains fully committed to protecting patron privacy by not using RFID technology for reasons of surveillance. The next technology is EnvisionWare computer management software. And this is essentially our the way that patrons would reserve time on the computers. Patron barcodes are associated with the reservation in the EnvisionWare technology while the patron is using the reserved computer. And for that reason, again, in discussions with COIT and the city attorney, we believe that this falls under the auspice of this particular ordinance. However, I want to be clear about this. EnvisionWare does not monitor or document what content, what type of content, or the websites that are being visited while the patron is using that computer. It only allows us to know that the patron is using that computer at that time. So again, we want to make sure it's stated for the record, SFPL is fully committed to protecting patron privacy in using this technology, and it will not be used for surveillance purposes. The third is security cameras, and you may have seen when a few slides ago we had, I think, 64 instances of technology that were submitted to COIT as part of the inventory citywide. A lot of departments use security cameras for various reasons. It was also specifically cited in the ordinance, so we want to be open and transparent about our use of security cameras. But the reason we use them is to ensure that people are safe in our facilities. They do not monitor or track individuals to determine what they're doing while at the library. They're static, and they do record for a period of time, but again, they're not used for surveillance. So we want to make sure that's fully stated for the record. We are fully committed to protecting patron privacy by not using security camera technology for surveillance purposes. So those are the 3 technologies we currently have on our inventory. Taking a look at the timeline, we're in the second rectangle there from the left, doing an introductory discussion of this ordinance and how it applies to SFPL here at the Commission tonight. In January, we expect it to go in front of the Technology and Privacy Surveillance Committee to discuss these technologies as well, ultimately driving toward approval with the Committee of Information Technology and bringing it back to this Commission with fully developed policies for each of those technologies for your approval. Hopefully that will happen in February. By March, we're also expecting to be able to take those policies that have been fully vetted and considered by this Commission to the Board of Supervisors for final approval. And with that, there will also be an annual reporting piece. So once we get through this part of the timeline and get everything approved, and the city feels comfortable with where everything is as far as these technologies, SFPL will be required to report on and update surveillance technologies annually. That could include any new technologies that we're purchasing or acquiring. It also could include any updates to existing technologies. So this is going to be an ongoing thing. So today we have myself, of course, who's been the lead on this project here at SFPL. We also have, right behind me, Emma Fernandez from the Committee on Information Technology, if any questions about this project or the ordinance itself come up. as well as a cast of millions, it feels like, with respect to our Chief Information Officer. Michael Lang is here. Shelley Cocking is here as well to talk about RFID. And of course, Michael and Maureen have been actively involved as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. So at this time, we are going to have public comment on this item, and then we'll invite the commission to have a discussion and ask any questions that they may have. Public comment, please.
Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. I just wanted to say that your previous discussion completely did not mention new initiatives. You should not be discussing initiatives under cover of budget. And I can tell one of the commissioners, and the rest of you might be interested, I've seen a vending machine. It's a pathetically impoverished representation of the library and is not equal access, because there was, in the one that I saw, no way of requesting materials. It only delivered for those who had access to their own computers or were at a library already, in which case they probably didn't need the vending machine. But to discuss initiatives under a budget when you should be having discussions separately is very wrong. We've been very concerned with RFID and other library privacy busting practices. The ACLU of Northern California and the Electronic Frontier Foundation have consistently strongly opposed the implementation of RFID. So let me say, if you required at the library that I wear my social security number and my name on my forehead in large letters in order to check out books, but you promised only to scan below the neck, maybe you could say, we're not using this in any way that impinges on a person's confidential information, but when I walk out on the street and it's indelible ink, maybe there's an issue. And perhaps that's a dramatic way of saying that RFID tags set people up for others to track what they are, to read the tags through their clothes or bags if they have access to the technology, and read the unique numbers of the items and figure out in a variety of ways what those folks are reading. The library doesn't need to do that. The library already knows what I've checked out or you've checked out because you checked the stuff out. Those tags can also be used to track people as to where they go and when on a selective basis, not continuous, but on a selective basis. Again, the library doesn't care where I go with the book. They just want it back in time. But others, it's a setup for privacy and surveillance issues. Envisionware may not monitor, but what records are kept? What is the retention? Security cameras, what tapes are kept? What retention is there? How does that set the library up for law enforcement or other people to request or get information?
Thank you.
These things are not covered here.
Thank you. Further
Thank
public
you.
comment?
And you're not familiar with RFID.
Further public comment on this item? Seeing that there's none, we're going to move into our commission discussion on the surveillance technology policy. Commissioners, do you have any comments or questions for Randy or any of the individuals that were involved in this presentation? Commissioner Wong?
Thank you for such in-depth work. I have personal experience with similar, the EU equivalent of this, which is for the public GDPR, is this time, or about last year, I think it was like March of 2018 or something, or May of 2018, like wreaked havoc on the software industry because of these sort of like broad sweeping language things. So for example, like the ordinance itself, just for the public's awareness, by one harsh interpretation of that ordinance would say that literally anything, including things that would just connect you to the internet, period, just like the fact that you're on the internet, would constitute something that's potentially surveillance. So it's like really tricky, and I think the people who write these ordinances don't often have the context to really understand what type of burden they're placing on their agencies. And so I appreciate all the work that the library staff has done to work through this and not get stuck in this, because it totally could have gotten everyone stuck. On the broader topic of RFID, I'll just repeat what I said previously, right? Like it's RFID in general is like when used in a passive sense, like like so many things have to go perfectly right for this to become an issue, and if that were to be true, then you have much broader issues. For example, like the fact that we only place information about the book specifically on the RFID chip means that there's like, crazy unimaginable ways that you could potentially, like a Hollywood screenwriter could probably put together like a sequence of events that makes it be like an issue for one particular person. So it's like conceivable, but like, is it actually going to happen? Like, again, so many things have to be to fall in the correct order for that to actually happen. And by the time you get there, it's like more likely that like Equifax has like their whole credit score issue again. Like it's just so many things that they have to balance, and of course, like it is incumbent on the library to develop a stance on that. But there are no clean answers to these types of things, and it's a really, really hard discussion. So again, I think the overall takeaway is that I think we've done a really good job in carefully weighing the concerns and talking to the right people specifically. Like we're not pretending to be experts here, nor should we. But we know how to draw on the folks who do have expertise, and I think that's much more important.
Thank you. Commissioner Wolf? No? Commissioner Lee?
Yes. Thank you for preparing this and getting all of us educated, and so that not only us educated, but the public would equally be educated without a difference of perspective. Now, imagination, as Commissioner Wong said, there can be a lot of imagination. So having said that, I'm just wondering, so Peter mentioned about GDPR, so I won't go there. About in terms of the laptop, for example, people check out the laptop, and the laptop will have audit trail. So people will check out, they check back in, and then the machine stays there. Somebody else will be checking it out again, and so on. So there are vulnerabilities, so to speak, to say that, yes, since you mentioned about transparency and that sort of thing. So other people, the real genuine hackers, will have that. So what measures are put into place so that we can minimize that window and help the people to have a greater confidence and without fear? Because a lot of people have different misinterpretation. So that is the one question that I have.
Thank you for the question. It's an excellent question, Commissioner Lee. And fortunately, we're not starting from scratch with this surveillance technology policy. In a couple of the instances, we already have policies in place that are duplicative in some ways. So with respects to using our public access computers, laptops, the desktops, we have an internet use policy. And furthermore, we have guidelines for using our public access computers. And we can actually bring these policies back in February as explanatory documents. But I'll just read directly from the internet use policy. The library does not monitor an individual's use of the internet. Computer search stations are programmed to delete the history of a user's internet session once the session is ended. The computer booking history is deleted every day. And then furthermore, San Francisco Public Library does not provide information about patrons' library records, use of other SFPL materials, or use of the internet to law enforcement officials without an appropriate court order.
as you say, that the sort of purging that sort of once a day, but there is a vulnerability window in during the day, one check out and check in. So all I'm saying that there is nothing perfect here, but so we at least acknowledge that we have sort of those kind of windows of vulnerability, so that we do not impress the public as if this is such a 100% sort of guarantee, if you will. My other question is about this annual reporting. Even before annual reporting, all these additional sort of regulatory work and what have you, how much FTE would be added, if you will, if all these things are exercised to such an extreme?
You want to speak to that?
So this is really an unfunded mandate for us, and the expectation that comes out of this is that we are to find a way to do it within the existing staffing that we have. So, and especially if you align that with the general direction from the mayor's office during budget of not growing your FTE count, it is a matter of how do we squeeze it in and determine who are the responsible parties and the backup within our existing staffing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Further commission comments and or questions on this item? Randy, thank you for your work on this policy. Thank you all of those that have been supportive of Randy. And one of the things I just want to say is that this was an education for all of us. The library should be one of the key educational institutions in the city. So it's an education just by doing this work and responding to the requirements of this ordinance. It's an education for the public as well. And one thing I just want to note is that, as one of the commissioners has already noted, that we are not experts, here on the commission, but yet we both have a duty and obligation to try to understand what the issues are so that we are fulfilling the demands of the requirements of the ordinance and also be serving our patrons in the way that they need to be. So thank you so much for your work on this part. So we're to our final item, which is the adjournment of our meeting. And we are going to be doing it this evening in the memory of Mark A. Coates, a San Francisco Public Library custodian. And I'm going to turn it over to our city librarian, Lambert, who will share some words.
Thank you, President Wardell. I appreciate this opportunity to pay tribute this evening to Mark Coates, a valued member of the San Francisco Public Library staff and dedicated civil servant for the city and county of San Francisco. Mark Coates was the victim of a senseless shooting in San Francisco on December 7th. This tragedy has deeply saddened our team. He dutifully worked for the San Francisco Public Library the past 5 years. He was hired as a part-time custodian in December of 2014 before ultimately being promoted to full-time in April of 2015. He worked extremely hard to keep the main library clean as a member of the night crew, and is remembered for his dedication and diligence in caring for and cleaning our flagship branch. He was a strong team player who often stepped up to support custodial operations in the branches or for special events. We're very fortunate to have members of Mr. Coates' family here this evening, including his mother, Camille Coates. Thank you all for being here, and thank you all for being so patient to wait for this agenda item. After reading the moving account of Mark Coates' life, it's apparent he was a devoted family man, beloved and cherished by all of his loved ones. A native San Franciscan, he was born on August 24th, 1969, to the proud parents of Robert and Camille Coates. He attended J. Eugene McAteer High School and City College of San Francisco. In addition to his service to the San Francisco Public Library, he worked for the San Francisco Housing Authority for many years as a tile layer. He's deeply missed by his San Francisco Public Library family. Thank you, Commissioners, for your consideration of adjourning the Library Commission meeting this evening in his memory.
Thank you. What we're going to do next is that we're going to call our final public comment, and I would ask that the comments for this item be on and related to the topic of Mark's life, and that we would refrain from any comments that would be outside of this agenda item. So at this time, I'd like to call for public comment.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you to the commission that is gathered here this evening. Michael, to you and to Maureen for your leadership and for this opportunity and this time that will never happen again, but it will lodge in the memories of this family that is here in this public forum as you honor our co-worker, Mark Coates. On behalf of all the custodians in our unit here at the library, I can truly say the deepest sympathy is extended to his mom and to his wife and to his family and to the entire Coates family. Scripture states that we should give honor to whom honor is due. So we honor Mark this evening as we remember his friendship, our co-worker, his love of God, his love for the 49ers, and for some, his brother in Christ. To his family here tonight, the tile floor that you entered in on and the carpet that you see here before you in this auditorium, Mark performed his duties and taught others to use equipment so that they could do the same thing and keep the upkeep of what you see this evening. And of course, we cannot forget, we would be remiss if we forget his singing in the hallway. Mm-hmm. Custodial supervisors have resolved that our new equipment room, when it is completed, when we enter into it, we will call it Mark's Place. That way we can keep his memory at heart. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for this time tonight. And I want the family to remember that grief is simply the price of love.
Good evening, Madam Commissioner Wardell, Mr. Lambert. I am Ramona Burton. I am Mark's sister. I'm the oldest of 8 children. And I too want to thank you all for honoring my brother at this particular time. His death is extremely painful for our family, and we are honored to have you all honor Mark at this time. On behalf of our family, I thank you. And Mom, do you have anything you want me to say that I missed anything? You want to say something?
Handheld. There's a handheld mic coming.
I will also add for your information that Mark was her favorite.
He was, because he was a little troublemaker in the family. Anyway, he started trouble when he was a day old. The nurse came in and patted me on the blanket. She said, "Mrs. Coates, you and your son are going to have to leave." I said, "Why? He's just a day old." He said, "Well, he woke up the whole nursery, he pooped in 3 diapers, and he sucked 3 bottles." She said, "You're going to have to leave." And that was the beginning of Mark's life. He always had to cause trouble wherever he went. So that's my son, and that's my favorite. So shoot me. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to invite any further comment.
Thank you all so much for honoring my uncle, Mark Coates. I did want to say, I was extremely disheartened at the beginning of this meeting when Mr. Warfield decided to use this platform to dishonor him. He complained about the library being a mess, but chose to dishonor the man who worked really hard to keep it clean. Perhaps instead of filing countless lawsuits and complaining about every item on the agenda, you could use your platform in a positive way. Thank you.
Any other member of the public would like to make a public comment on this agenda item?
I have to tell this story.
We can make sure you tell it in the mic.
I reminded my friend, I'm Ramona's best friend, and we've been friends for, I won't say how many years. And she would tell me all the time, Mark is my mother's favorite. I said, I don't believe that. I said, because your mother has 8 beautiful children. I can't believe that she doesn't love all of her children just the same. And she said, no, Mark is my mother's favorite. And this went on for years. And finally, we were with Camille, and Ramona said, Mama, who's your favorite? She said, Mark. Never doubted it, never questioned it again. Right then, I knew that Mark was her favorite, but she loved all her children.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further public comment?
Good afternoon. I work here at nighttime with my best friend, coworker, and I want to tell you we're going to miss him. And always I working across the children's, but sometimes we don't see that he was singing. I said, we don't see him today. He doesn't sing because we can hear the voice of him. I said, maybe he calling sick. And that's when we see when he's not around, because how he was working and singing all the time. And we see across, the bridge, and we always talking. But that's just, we always going to remember him. And we want to tell you was a good coworker, good friend, and we're going to missing him. He's, always going to be in our heart, in our memory. And that's what I want to let you know, guys. He's a good friend and good coworker, but always going to be in our heart. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any final public comment? Seeing that there's none, I will ask commissioners, do you have any comments that you'd like to make on this item before we adjourn? Commissioner Mall?
To the Coates family, I'm really quite saddened to hear the story, and I just wanted to relay my condolences. Personally, I'm sorry I didn't know your son or know your husband, but he sounded like just a wonderful person and a great addition to the library and the city as well. I also wanted to say that I think you must have done a wonderful job with your family, because there were children in this auditorium that sat quietly in a way I've never seen children sit quietly. I thought they were all really amazing. So you've all done a wonderful job with your families.
She said it all. Commissioner Gunning.
I also want to express my condolences to Mr. Coates' family. Thank you for staying through the meeting and being here for this. It's a great opportunity to hear more about him and to honor him. And I think as a commissioner, it's a reminder for me how many people it takes to make this system work. when you talk about libraries, you have a tendency to think about the frontline staff, the librarians, the people that you interact with, but there is a whole host of people with a variety of skill sets and personalities and lives that make this work, from the custodial staff to the drivers, to the facility staff, to the librarians and everyone. And so this is a lovely reminder of all of the people that it takes to make this the city's most highly graded department. I don't know if you know that, but this, in the city survey, we got an A-. We're the most highly rated city department. And Mark Coates was part of that, so thank you.
So at this time, we'd like to adjourn this December 19th, 2019 meeting of the San Francisco Public Library in the loving memory of Mark A. Coates, San Francisco Public Librarian custodian. I'd like to call for a motion to adjourn. And a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? This meeting is adjourned.
Happy holidays.